When Grandpa Walter died at 91, everyone in the family cried. At least, that's what it looked like. But 3 days after the funeral, nobody cared about his memories anymore. They cared about one thing: the safe. A massive steel safe hidden behind a painting in Grandpa's study. A safe no one had ever been allowed to open. The moment the family lawyer announced that the combination would be revealed during a gathering at the old family estate, decades of love, loyalty, and family values suddenly became secondary. Because everyone believed Grandpa had hidden millions inside. What they found instead changed the family forever. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, if your grandparents left behind a mysterious safe, what would you expect to find inside? Money? Jewelry? Family secrets? Let us know below. The Whitmore family gathered at the old estate in Connecticut. The house stood exactly as it had for nearly 50 years, elegant, quiet,
filled with memories
and tension. Walter Whitmore had spent most of his life building a successful business and providing for his family. By all appearances, he had left behind a comfortable fortune. His 4 children arrived early. Richard, the oldest son, wore an expensive suit and checked his phone every few minutes. Diane, a retired school principal, carried herself with dignity, but couldn't hide her curiosity. Michael arrived looking exhausted, burdened by years of poor financial decisions and mounting debt. Susan, the youngest daughter, had flown in from California. She rarely visited and seemed uncomfortable being back home. Soon the grandchildren and spouses arrived as well. Everyone hugged, everyone smiled, everyone offered condolences. For about 10 minutes. Then the real conversations began. I've always wondered what's inside that safe. Dad was secretive about his investments. There could be stock certificates worth millions. I heard he bought gold years ago. Maybe cash. Nobody talked about Walter. Nobody shared favorite memories. Nobody mentioned his kindness, the stories he told, the advice he gave. Only the safe mattered. Only what might be hidden inside. From the corner of the living room sat Emily, Walter's 26-year-old granddaughter. She watched quietly. During Walter's final years, she had become his closest companion. While the rest of the family visited occasionally, Emily came every weekend. She brought groceries, drove him to doctor appointments, helped around the house, and spent countless afternoons listening to his stories. Walter often joked that families became very interesting whenever inheritance was involved. At the time, Emily thought he was exaggerating. Now, she wasn't so sure. At exactly 2 o'clock, family attorney David Harper entered the study. Everyone followed him. The room felt smaller than usual because every available space was occupied. The safe stood behind Walter's old desk. Large, heavy, impressive. The object of everyone's attention. David placed his briefcase on the desk and cleared his throat. Your grandfather left very specific instructions regarding the opening of this safe. Instantly, the room fell silent. He stated that every immediate family member must be present before the combination is revealed. Several people exchanged excited glances. David continued. He also instructed that the contents must be viewed by everyone at the same time. Richard smiled. Michael leaned forward eagerly. Susan crossed her fingers. Someone whispered, "This must be important." David removed a folded piece of paper from his briefcase. The combination. The room became so quiet that people could hear the old clock ticking on the wall. David slowly entered the numbers. The lock clicked. The heavy metal door swung open. Everyone held their breath. Expecting stacks of cash, Gold bars, jewelry, documents proving ownership of hidden assets, anything, something. Instead, they saw dozens of sealed envelopes neatly arranged on shelves and a single wooden box. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Michael frowned. "That's it?" Richard stepped closer. "Where's the money?" Confusion spread across the room. David remained calm. "Please open the wooden box." Richard reached inside and lifted the lid. Within it sat a flash drive, a handwritten note, and a small key. David connected the flash drive to a television in the study. The screen flickered. Then Walter appeared. The video had clearly been recorded only a few months earlier. His face looked older, thinner, but his eyes still carried the warmth everyone remembered. "If you're watching this," Walter began, smiling gently, "then I suppose I've finally run out of time." A few family members wiped away tears. Walter continued. "Most of you are probably expecting wealth inside that safe." Several people shifted uncomfortably. Walter laughed softly. "I know my family." The room remained silent. "There is no fortune inside this safe." The reaction was immediate. "What? That can't be true. Where did everything go?" Walter raised a finger on the screen. "Relax. The financial assets were distributed through legal trusts and estate planning years ago. What remains here is something I consider far more valuable." Nobody looked convinced. Walter continued. "If you're disappointed, that proves exactly why I created this final lesson." The room grew quiet again. David then instructed everyone to find the envelope bearing their name. Each family member took one. Inside every envelope was a handwritten letter. Personal, private, written specifically for the recipient. One by one, people began reading. The atmosphere changed. Richard's confident expression faded. In his letter, Walter praised his determination and success, but warned him that chasing status had cost him valuable relationships. Diane smiled through tears as she read Walter's words thanking her for dedicating her life to education. Susan cried openly after reading a letter explaining that Walter had never felt abandoned when she moved across the country. He had always been proud of her courage to build her own life. Then came Michael. His hands trembled as he opened his envelope. Inside was an old photograph. The picture showed him working beside Walter in the garage as a teenager. On the back were 5 handwritten words. "I already forgave you, son." Michael stared at the photograph. Then he began to cry. Years earlier, he had secretly taken money from Walter during a desperate period in his youth. He had never confessed. The guilt had followed him for decades. Walter had known all along, and forgiven him, long ago. The room fell silent. For the first time that day, nobody seemed interested in inheritance. Nobody cared about hidden wealth. They cared about the words in their hands, about the man who had written them, about the things left unsaid during his lifetime. One by one, family members shared parts of their letters. Some laughed, some cried, some apologized to each other. Walls that had existed for years slowly began to crumble. Eventually, David spoke again. "There is one envelope remaining." Everyone looked toward Emily. She picked up the final envelope and opened it carefully. Inside was another key and a short note. Only one sentence. "Thank you for staying when nobody else had time." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She pressed the note against her chest. David smiled gently. "Mr. Whitmore left one final instruction." The room became attentive once more. "The key Emily received belongs to a safety deposit box." Immediately, curiosity returned. Perhaps there was money after all. Perhaps this was the real inheritance. Weeks later, Emily visited the bank and opened the box. There were no diamonds, no gold, no secret fortune. Instead, she found hundreds of journals. Every diary Walter had written throughout 70 years of his life. His childhood memories, his military service, his first meeting with Emily's grandmother, his failures, his victories, his fears, his regrets, his dreams, his wisdom. And resting on top was one final handwritten note. Stories disappear when nobody preserves them. Thank you for preserving mine. Emily spent the next year reading every journal. What she discovered amazed her. The man she thought she knew turned out to be far more complex than she had ever imagined. Eventually, she compiled his life story into a book for the family. For the first time, the Whitmores understood who Walter truly was. Not the businessman, not the owner of an estate, not the man with a mysterious safe, but the human being behind all of it. Years later, family members still talked about the day the safe was opened. Not because of what they found, but because of what they didn't find. There was no hidden treasure, no secret fortune, no mountain of wealth. Yet somehow, everyone left richer. Because Walter's final gift wasn't money, it was perspective. A reminder that families often spend years fighting over what someone owned while forgetting who that person actually was. And sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't money, property, or valuables. Sometimes the greatest inheritance is forgiveness. Sometimes it's wisdom. Sometimes it's love. And sometimes it's simply being remembered. Because a safe can protect wealth, but only memories can protect a legacy.